Hi everybody, Mature Simmer here. So welcome back to another in the Non-Aviator Flight Sim series. Today we're going to talk about kind of how you get going and how you understand how to pick a plane. This should be pretty quick. So you go into World Map to do most of your flying, well really all of your non-structured flying. And you'll be in here and usually it'll be the last airport you've been in, kind of what comes up. But you would think that the last thing you've been in would be in your history. It isn't entirely. I mean, these are airports I have flown to recently, but not the one that I'm at. So it doesn't update that. How it does the recommended spots, honestly, I don't know. We'll get going on the screen kind of from the upper left. So the first thing is your aircraft. So if you click on it, you'll get this menu, and we'll kind of go through what these things are from top to bottom. So you've got aircraft selection, and I do have a mixture of aircraft that came in Microsoft Flight Simulator Standard and some payware aircraft and some freeware type things. Like if you've done any kind of research around Microsoft Flight Simulator, you've probably heard about the Airbus A320 model by Fly-by-Wire. You'll see that in here. There it is. One of my favorite planes, by the way. It's really exceptional. But then I've got, some Douglas DC-8s if I wanted to fly some old things. Some for regional jets. I've got some Embraers, some general aviation. These things I think these all do come with Microsoft Flight Simulator. The Bombardiers again, which are CRJs, are also additional jets. The Hornet does come with the game. I'm not a big military flyer, so you probably won't see me do a lot of those. Various Boeings, an Airbus from Phoenix, and then some other Airbuses as well that exist, along with some of the old or the acrobatic type planes if you're into some of that. So basically your choice is, we'll click one of these just so you can kind of more clearly see the highlighted box. But you can see basically you get 4 pieces of information outside of what type of plane it is. Cruise speed is basically once it's flying straight and level at altitude, you can say that's about how fast it'll be going. And that this is in knots, which is the indicator that they use in aviation. Roughly correlates to miles per hour, but not entirely. And then the challenge is this is the airspeed. The ground speed could be vastly different depending on the wind direction and so forth. And for an airliner or something like that, it'll tell you pretty clearly. The maximum altitude is certainly important. More about if you're flying somewhere where you need that. Anything that's above 30,000 feet for sure is kind of, high level, quick speed airliners usually. And then endurance kind of gives you an estimate of about how long it'll go, but really what you're looking at is the range. And this is, once again, a bit of a guesstimate to some degree, because I have, for example, tried to use this Phoenix Airbus to go about 3,000 miles, and it couldn't make it. So you just do need to be careful with that to make sure and just try things. And then there are helicopters included and so forth. But really, you're making your selection based on the type of aircraft you want and then, how far it'll go. So really what kind of flight you're taking. So if you're taking a 2,000-mile flight, you're not going to be able to use a lot of the general aviation craft. You'll see that they're 400 miles for the Cessna. The Diamond will go 1,200, but it's not going to go 2,000. Even the TBM 930 is only going to go 1730. And once you've done that, you can then go to liveries, which basically are the paint jobs. So I'm part of Virtual Airline, a VA, so that's what these are, is for that. So not all my airplanes have that, but you can see, some have more than others. And you can find these for free. You can buy some. You can do whatever. I think most of these for this plane, because I've used it a little bit for various things, I found a pack, I think, that had a bunch of free ones. So I went ahead and got that, and that gave me multiple liveries. Within each plane, then, you can, before you go in, work on weight and balance. So weight and balance can be changed inside, like once you load past this and you're at the airport. But if you want to go ahead and do some things, you can adjust that here, and you can do it with sliders. You can type things in, and then it'll do the calculations down here. You can toggle this so that the fuel shows in pounds, because a lot of times from a flight plan, it's going to tell you how many pounds of fuel versus how many gallons of fuel you need. And then normally, I don't really do anything with this, but some people enjoy creating failures, enabling them, arming them, saying, hey, it's in 15 minutes I'm going to have an oil leak. And that allows them to practice emergencies and so forth. So you can do that. The system also allows just kind of normal wear and tear on a plane, and there can be random failures, and you can turn that on and off within the regular options. I covered the options to some degree, or at least how to get to them, in the initial Microsoft Flight Simulator video, so you can go check that out if you're interested. And then the customization, really the biggest thing here is you can put in a tail number, and so for planes that will display that, if you put that in, it'll appear in various places on the model. And then if you want a specific call sign, heavy is used for really large airliners, so like that 747-8 would be a heavy. If my call sign here is Walker 4021 heavy, if I was flying a large 747 like that, I could do that. And again, whether you show the tail number or not, but sometimes that's determined on the model itself. So you can go ahead and just close out, or you can just immediately go over here and say, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and pick something else. If I pick a different airport, you'll see how the map just kind of moves over to that area. The nice thing with Flight Simulator is it will give you the layout as it knows it of the airport. And so any of these circles are places you can start the plane. So if you're looking more to you're not really looking for the sim experience, you're just, I want to get in, I want to fly, you can start on a runway. But most people will tell you, like if they're trying to pretend that they're piloting, I mean, part of the pilot experience is getting the plane ready, getting the flight computers ready. Yes, you can do some of that stuff. You can kind of do most of it, other than the ground services on the runway, but it wouldn't be realistic. You wouldn't be sitting on a runway for 15 minutes while you're putting your flight plan into your flight management computer, for example. And you can also see these here. So you can see there are small gates, and these do tell you they're all ramp GA smalls. So if you had a bigger plane, technically it doesn't fit here, but Microsoft isn't going to stop you from spawning in. So then the other thing you've got to think about is time. When do you want to fly? You can just let the system do real time and real weather, so that's also in the flight conditions here. So that time slider can be adjusted here as well. And again, you can pick real time, and then it'll just figure out when that is, and that'll be it. And if you change it from that, it's no longer real time, and you can change the date so that you can, I think it'll do snow and so forth. And then you can either do live weather, or you can set weather, and it's got some default conditions, basically the level of clouds, all the way up to, snow, storm, and all of that. These are all just layers that you'll go through, but this one you can see has a little bit, it's not quite 1,000 feet wide. And I think you can also, adjust that way. And so there's a lot of ways to manipulate what you've got. And then this is wind layers, and you can insert wind layers over here as well. So if you scroll down here, it gives you more of the detail, but you can add a wind layer, so there's always those options as well. You can delete a wind layer. So that lets you set your conditions. Now you will run into situations where you'll load in and it won't load with the right location. So again, when you set departure here, you can see now it changed it. So that's where it'll show you any other additional information. Part of what's good to know is typically if it's like this where the wind is less than 3 knots, it's what's known as wind calm, which basically means the wind really has no impact to how this airport will be operating. But once you get above the 3 knots, especially above 5 and things like that, and if you're getting into the double digits, most definitely you're going to want to take off and land into the wind. So what this is saying, wind is coming from 270, so directionality starts 0 at the top, 90, 180, 270, 360. So 360 and 0 are obviously the same. So basically wind's blowing 2 knots out of the west. If it was blowing at any length of speed, really your best runway would be this one. But your challenge is, and the runway numbers are simply, again, the way they point. So, this is runway 21 because 180 is straight down. This angle is basically 210 degrees. So that is what that is. So this would basically be a 270 runway for the most part. So you can see there's a runway 27 and then runway 9 is just the other side of it. So you just add or subtract 18 and then that's how you're going to get there. So 18 and 36 is this one and then 21 and 3 are that. But the issue is 9 and 27 are only 4,000 feet. So that gets you to the kind of the last piece you need to understand, which is the capabilities of your aircraft. And the simplest way that I've found to do this is simply Google runway length for the aircraft you're trying to look at, and it will tell you what the shortest runway it can take off and land at is. You can push that a little bit. Again, it's a sim. If it doesn't work, you might get stuck somewhere, but nobody's gonna die or anything like that. So that's part of the fun. You get to experiment and so forth. If you want, you can set your arrival. If you're planning on programming or loading a flight plan from, say, something like SimBrief into your aircraft, really all you need is the from, so that the aircraft can spawn in and then, set your flight conditions. So I'm going to go ahead and put live weather on. I have no idea what the weather in Texas is like now. And then when you're done, you go ahead, we're going to make this, and you'll notice I changed it. It was a 2 and it put it at 7. Keep an eye on the time because sometimes as you change things, the time will just get moved. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this and, okay, well, it won't let me delete it, so hopefully it'll just go in. We'll see if it spawns in. And as you can see, you can spawn to a custom area. If kind of a more advanced piece, if you want to spawn into a specific longitude and latitude, you can search for that. You can search for a bunch of things here. If you're not on the ground and you're not spawning into something like this, you'll be airborne at I think about 1,500 feet is where it'll put you, and your plane will be flying. So you could go ahead and pick this, and then it would spawn you in the air, kind of over this field. So it does allow you, for example, to drag the map down here. Say you want to start here, and then you could practice landing, for example. And then you hit fly. And as you can see, it completely ignored the time. It's spawning me in at 8:39 p.m. So I'll be able to show you how to fix this. It does look like maybe we're still in the right place. We are on a ramp. It didn't put us on the runway. So this may be ramp 43. But basically, if you go to your center menu here, and then you're looking for this weather, the cloud is the weather, and this gives you that same toggle. So you can just go back and put it to the 3 p.m. you wanted, close it, and now it's 3 p.m. And this is what the live weather is like in Texas. But, and whoops. And now you're spawned in, and you can see again, I had that tail number. This plane has it visible here. Sometimes there's a plate inside that you can see it on as well. It doesn't look like it. Usually it's a little square plate. Oh, there it is. So in the King Air, it's over there. But that gets you what you need to basically know how you pick an aircraft, physically how you pick an aircraft, what you think about as you're picking an aircraft. You obviously need to know, does it have the range? Does it have the capability, what you're looking for? And is the airfield you're going to be working with, can it accommodate that? Because, for example, there are airfields similar to this where maybe the longest runway is 4,000 feet. You can't use a 747 out of that airport. the runways aren't long enough, so that's not going to work. And then, the settings you can adjust and so forth, and how to get in here. So I just wanted to give you that as a quick overview, again, without focusing on the aviation pieces of it more than is necessary. Man, that wind is howling. Wind is 320, so 320 degrees, so basically out of the north for the most part, at 17 knots with gusts of 31. So for this plane, this would actually be pretty dangerous conditions to try to fly in. It's really kind of at the borderline. It may even be exceeding it at the base wind, and the gusts are absolutely something that the plane would struggle with, because a lot of especially if they somehow were crosswinds at some point, because usually, above anything substantially above 20 knots as a crosswind almost makes it impossible, because as the plane starts to gain lift going down the runway, suddenly it's getting blown off the surface to the side, and that could obviously be catastrophic if you can't actually take off cleanly. Again, getting into way more detail, but you can start to see why you're not wrong if you're thinking there's a lot in flight sim, but it's really, really fun and rewarding. So I hope if you're trying to get into this, or just you got attracted to this series because you're like me, you're like, I'd love to try this, but I just don't even know. Stick with me. I'm going to get you there, and absolutely ask questions, because I think this is really accessible to just about everyone. A little anecdote, I was kind of doing some research on something else around flight sim, and I was very sad to hear some gentleman watched a video from somebody, and once again, because it was the standard thing you see in flight sims, where it's people who know what they're doing or learned what they're doing. I mean, I could certainly do a video and sound way more capable than a non-aviator, because I've certainly learned things, and I'm much more comfortable doing this. But the gentleman basically was like, I was thinking about doing this, but I'm 75, my reflexes aren't the way they used to be. I don't know that I'd really be successful at it, so I'm not going to waste my time and money. And it just really broke my heart to hear that comment, because I think anybody can do this with a little bit of effort. And the nice thing is, like I said, even if you crash the plane, you just start over again here. I mean, there aren't the circumstances that you have in real life, and you can at least get that enjoyment. So obviously the gentleman there had enough interest to watch the video about it, so he clearly was interested in doing it, but then the video itself basically convinced him he couldn't do it, which is certainly not my goal, because I really think it's unlikely that you can't do it. You just may need some additional help to get there, and that's what I'm here for. So ask me any questions, suggestions for videos of things you want me to cover for the flight series here. I'm not really doing anything in sequence, because it really just depends what people need. So they're going to go consume whatever video topic is important to them at any given time. And people may not choose to fly in the same sequence or whatever, so it may take a while for me to get to something that you want to work on. You may be already on your journey but been struggling with something. Let me know. I'm not necessarily required to do these in sequence, because they're not working that way, nor can they really be properly designed that way, in my opinion. So, but with that, I'm going to wrap this up, and if you've enjoyed this but haven't dropped a like, please consider doing that. Helps with visibility of the channel, lets people know that there's interesting stuff here. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider that as well. And I will see you next time.